I've noticed an actual difference in my body when incorporating these ingredients. One thing I've really been focusing on lately when it comes to food in my diet is whether the food is warming or cooling. And this is a concept I did not know about for a long time. I really just learned about it a couple years ago. And I find it so fascinating because it's not really something we grow up learning in Western medicine. I don't know one doctor or nutritionist I've ever talked to who's gotten into warming and cooling food properties. But I first learned about it in Ayurveda, which I thought was interesting, but it was, I didn't know much about it. And then when I learned that it was also a thing in Chinese medicine, and then especially with Iranian traditional medicine, because that's my background, I got really, really intrigued. And what makes me even more passionate about this topic is that I've actually experimented with it and seen results. Not only have I, but even the acupuncturist that I went to noticed, people in my life noticed. So let me just give you a little background to that. I've always run really cold. My whole life, I've always been a little colder than average. And I even remember when I worked at the pharmacy, I would get in arguments because I was in an office setting and I'd always want the AC off and everybody else would be sweating and I was freezing. I would always go to all of my jobs in a zip up fleece and make sure I was in a scarf, just abnormally cold. I was talking with my family about it once and my grandparents said something about eating warming foods, and even with all the gut health stuff I've dealt with over the years, people that different functional medicine doctors and holistic practitioners mentioned that I should be focusing on warming foods. So when multiple people were telling me about it, I was like, there must be something to this. I started eating this way and actually noticed a difference. And the foods I'm going to talk about today, or really just this really simple tea recipe, are the things that I started incorporating and actually noticed my body temperature getting warmer. I remember I went to acupuncture and the acupuncturist was like, oh, you feel warmer. And that was one thing I was like, okay, I wonder if this is actually working. I try so many things and a lot of times they don't work. At least they don't work for me because I think everything's different for everyone. So I get excited when I actually see the result. I was in LA. I recently moved to New York and I was in LA getting my makeup done with my favorite makeup artist, and I hadn't seen him in a couple years, and shout out Brian Valentine, he's the best. And he was doing my makeup and I had the door open and he was like, are you not cold? And I'm like, no, why? And he's like, honestly, what's going on right now? Because he's used to coming over to my apartment and the heat's on 80 and I didn't notice a difference, but he's like, you would normally never be able to sit in this temperature. I'm always sweating when I do your makeup. So I'm just proof that it actually works and I don't feel as cold anymore. I feel comfortable. So before I break down this tea recipe, let me just give you a quick background in terms of warming and cooling foods. So every culture has its own way of, going about it and analyzing it. So in Ayurveda, they have different doshas where they have, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. I'm considered the most classic Vata. Apparently we're airy and cold and dry. I don't know, so you can look it up and see, but all of the foods that are recommended for me are warming. So they categorize foods in warm and cool. And then in Chinese medicine, they categorize foods in terms of warm and cold and also wet or dry, or damp and dry. And same with Iranian traditional medicine. You basically have cold and warm, cold and dry, wet and dry, wet and damp. So you have these different categories. So they have a little bit of a different spin on all of them. And I have noticed, because I've really been trying to research this, if anyone knows a lot about this, really professionally, please let me know in the comments, because I do find mixed data on certain foods where they fall under different categories. Sometimes I see apples under warming or cooling, depending on if I'm looking under Chinese medicine or Iranian traditional medicine. I know lamb is one meat that's always considered warming. I feel like I've heard across the board, if you have a colder body, that's something that can really increase the fire and temperature in your body. That brings me to my next point. They refer to these foods in terms of different ailments you have. So it makes sense for someone like me who is, tends to run cold and also prone to digestive issues or has had some digestive issues, then warming foods are going to be your best friend because they heat up your spleen and your GI tract and help you digest better. Whereas cooler foods are known to help detox and clear out your blood. So it's really interesting. And there's also something to be said about eating warmer foods in the winter and cooler foods in the summer to balance your body. Because even my grandmother would say like cucumbers are cooling, so you eat them more in the summer to cool your body. And what's interesting is hot tea, black tea, I guess, is cooling because we always drink black tea in the summer to cool your body. I mean, we drink black tea every day, all year round, but I remember learning like, why would black tea cool you down in the summer? And there's also something to be said about the heat where your body like tries to compensate and cools your body down. So there also might be that aspect. So the foods that tend to be warming are like squash, pumpkin, things that are actually in season in the fall and winter. So I just feel like there's this intuitive sense in terms of what would warm you up and you would need in the fall and winter, and then what would cool you down in the summer. So for today's video, I am gonna focus on just a warming tea recipe. I will put in the notes below a little link to warming and cooling foods, or even just list them out. Again, I have found some different things, so I'll just try to do my best in terms of generalizing it, but this is the warming recipe that I started incorporating into my diet more and really noticed a difference. So we've got this little tea elixir. I will say foods that I've seen that are warming across the board on all of them are like onions, garlic, cinnamon, ginger, honey, lemon, cumin, coriander, cayenne pepper, like spicy warm foods, and all of these. So for this tea recipe, I'm just doing lemon, ginger, honey, and cinnamon. You can also do turmeric. Sometimes I do a little bit of both. I already have my hot water. So you can have your water in the kettle, but before I do that, I'm just gonna do the ginger. So I would highly recommend getting ginger root just because I like getting the natural form. You know, this is really just my personal opinion. I just think about what kind of life force food that's been sitting on a shelf has if it's been there forever. I mean, unless you're getting it from a really great spice shop. But I'm just like, if you're doing this for a really holistic reason versus flavor, try to go for the real thing. And I know ginger might seem intimidating because you're like, what do I do with this? It's so easy. You just peel it, and then if you get this little ginger grater, which I can link below to on Amazon, you just do this. I would recommend doing this over chopping it because chopping isn't gonna give you the flavor, and this makes it really yummy. This is what I do for ginger, like if I'm doing bone broth or any broth, I like grating it, and then I just kind of go to the other side and scoop it and dump it in. And I would do the same thing with turmeric, but if you're doing turmeric, make sure you wear gloves because it will stain your nails or your fingers or whatever. Okay, so you've got some ginger in there. So you can obviously do the ginger to taste, test out this recipe and see what you like. I'm gonna add the hot water now. Another thing you could do if you don't wanna grate the ginger is cut big chunks of it and boil it in water for like 30 minutes so it really absorbs it, and then just keep a batch in the fridge for a couple days. But this is just easy to do every day. Just takes a few minutes. Also gives a really nice scent to your kitchen. It just smells very fresh. I'm gonna use some lemon. So some people, I feel like ginger lemon seems like more of a sour, like tart thing or spicy, but I think adding the cinnamon and honey balances it so well, because obviously ginger has a little bit of a kick. Like, this is a really good recipe. I ran out of my bigger jar of Manuka Honey, so I'm using my travel packs, but this brand is so cool. It's Kiva, and they make Manuka Honey to go because I love honey, and now I especially eat it a lot because it keeps my body warm. But I don't want like processed teddy bear honey that's not giving me, I don't want the sugar and not the benefits. I just want to get all of it. So I throw a few of these in my purse if I'm traveling and add it to my tea. And Manuka Honey is certified where they have like the UMF factor, and they just make sure they test it for the antimicrobial properties. You know that you're getting the anti-inflammatory benefits. So it's more of like the real deal honey. Not saying all honey isn't, but at least you know this is good. We're gonna add some cinnamon. And this is obviously all to taste. Another thing I was gonna say, like, I know some people like things cold, but if you're trying to warm your body, I would recommend having it warm or at least room temperature. So this is one of those things to just sip. And for anyone who intermittent fasts, this is such a good thing to have in the morning because it won't break your fast if you don't wanna have like a latte or something. All right, let's see. delicious. I probably would want a little more ginger because it's a little heavy in the lemon, but you can just adjust as you go. So that's it. Honestly, it's really simple. Also, even like fresh, if you get a garlic crusher, throw some fresh garlic into olive oil and lemon, shake it up and put it in your fridge. That can be a salad dressing. Add in some onions. These foods, these core foods, are really going to warm your body in the winter, keep you cozy, and they're so good for your immunity. They're just great things to add in overall. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I will list a little bit of resources in terms of warming and cooling foods. If anyone has real resources, especially for Iranian traditional medicine, I've tried to find books because I'm really into this. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to learn more about it, and see you next time.